Hi, today's video I'm going to be talking about alternating Animar. So if you saw my previous videos on Animar, you know that I have two versions. One, the one I presented, which has the main themes of Morph and Eldrazi Titans. Tertiary theme, of course, of protecting Animar. So, years ago I was trying to copy Sheldon Manera's idea of having a commander deck for every possible color combination. And I exceeded that. Animar is one of the commanders where I actually had two versions. I had the version pretty much as presented in the previous video. Just creatures that I liked. No real theme other than just playing things that I thought were fun. And of course, Animar being the kill card. Beef them up, put a lot of counters on them by casting creatures. So what I did is eventually I realized that having that many cards tied up in across 30 decks or so that I really didn't get to play with much was kind of a misuse of resources. So I took apart the secondary version of Animar, but I put the cards aside, and that's what we're presenting today. So this is Animar, Lord of Hydras. So some of the cards I would swap in is Gaia's Cradle. Of course, Gaia's Cradle would be good in the other version of Animar, but I don't need that much raw mana as I do with the Hydras, because the X and the casting cost, the more mana I can pump into a creature and I'm casting it, the bigger it can get. So Gaia's Cradle is more efficient, more necessary in this version. Scarg the Rage Pits, so I can give a creature trample. Again, with a large Hydra. Say Apocalypse Hydra, if it's a 12/12, make it a 13/13 trampler, and it's much more of a threat than it was before. So this is another card that swap in. One of the reasons it's not in the other version of Animar is I'm minimizing the cards to produce colorless mana. I need to hit my colors as quickly as possible, so in that deck I only have two cards that produce colorless mana, and two lands that come into play tapped. So that's why that is not in there. Mage Slayer. This is not in the other version of Animar because of Uruk-Thar. So Uruk-Thar being one of the key cards I'm hoping to either draw or to find, putting them into play, and anytime anybody casts a non-creature spell they take 6 damage, including myself. I don't want too many cards that are non-creatures because I don't want to get hit by my own Uruk-Thar. But in this build, yeah, it's pretty good. Does some good work. Xenagos, God of Revels. So he's just in here because I couldn't see a place to put him in the other deck. Anybody who plays Commander knows you get to a point where you have a card that, oh wow, this would just be perfect in the deck. Oh, it's fantastic. What do I cut for it? And that's usually a painful question. So because there's nothing I specifically want to cut for Xenagos, because I have so many small creatures, I'm going wide. The only creature that's really getting big is Animar. And then the only creatures that are big are the few Eldrazi. Xenagos just isn't that impressive. The effect of doubling creatures' power. Let's see. Yes, I do need to reread the card, as anybody who's watched my videos knows. So, Xenagos, 5 for 6/5, indestructible. As long as your devotion red and green is less than 7, he is not a creature. Side point. At the beginning of combat in your turn, another target creature gains haste and gets +X/+X for end of turn, or exits its power. So, like I said, with the other version of Animar, there's not a whole lot of creatures so that'd be impressive. With this one, as you'll see, that becomes very impressive very quickly. Guided Passage. I've always loved this card. Ever since I first saw it in Apocalypse, it just feels like a fun card. And it's hilarious to watch my opponents try to give me something that isn't relevant at the time. A lot of times they fail, and they have to give me something that turns out to be relevant after all. So, Guided Passage, blue, green, red, for a sorcery. Reveal the cards in my library. An opponent chooses among them a creature, a land, and a non-creature, non-land card. I put them in my hand, and then I shuffle my library. So for 3, they get to go through my library and give me 3 things that they don't think will help me. Or, if we're being political, I have somebody do it that I want to make a deal with. So they give me something useful, and in return I provide some favor. Stonecoil Serpent, X. For an artifact creature snake, reach, trample, protection from multicolored. Very relevant in Commander. Enters battle with X +1/+1 encounters on it. So, the reach and trample kind of work against each other, because trample you want to be attacking, therefore he's turned sideways, he can't block. Reach is a blocking ability, so there's a certain tension with this card. But sometimes the tension makes the card fun. Gives one more decisions, more lines of play to consider. Oh, Naginata. Again, this is not in the other version of Animar because it's not that impressive because of the way that I'm going with the deck. This, pretty much any Hydra, so Oh Naginata. 1 for an equipment, can only be attached to a creature with power 3 or greater. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and trample. So with Hydras, typically they're going to be greater than 3 power. I have a lot of them shot through the deck if I build this version of Animar. So this starts to do some damage. So for boots, 2, 1 to equip. Equipped creature gets hexproof and haste. Okay. It's just kind of in there. Mindless Automaton. 4, for a creature that comes into play at 2 +1/+1 counters. I can spend 1, choose and discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Mindless Automaton, or I can remove 2 +1/+1 counters from it to draw a card. So the idea is in this version of the deck, I have counters, I have ways of moving the counters, so I can put more on him and just keep drawing cards. So that's what he's for. Just pretty much raw card draw with extra steps. Speaking of counters, Contagion Clasp. So 2, artifact comes into play, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. 4, tap, proliferate. Put any number of counters, or choose any number of permanents with counters on them. Add 1 more counter of that type. So, Mindless Automaton. Add another counter on him with the proliferation, or kill some of my opponent's creatures. Speaking of the clasp, now we upgrade to Contagion Engine. 6. When it enters battlefield, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target opponent controls. So the clasp hits 1 creature, the engine hits all of them for 1 player, and again 4, proliferate. 4, tap, choose any number of permanent counters on them, add 1 more counter of that type. Oh, then do it again. Oh, yeah, I need to read the card. Proliferate, then proliferate again. I should probably read the card before I make these videos, but I just prefer going unscripted. Evolution Vet. 3, for an artifact. 3, tap target creature and put a +1/+1 counter on it. Until end of turn, that creature gains 2 green-blue. Double the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. So with the Hydras, with Automaton, with the next card you're going to see, this is quite useful. Ashland's Pilgrim. 2 for a 1/1 legendary elemental shaman. 1 colorless red. Put a +1/+1 counter on Ashland's Pilgrim. If this is the 3rd time the ability has resolved this turn, remove all +1/+1 counters from Ashling, and it deals that much damage to each creature and each player. So, obviously I can't do it more than 3 times in 1 turn if I want to really beef it up, but each turn, if I put 2 and then 2 and then eventually he'll get up to 10. She'll get up to 10 really quickly. Or more. And it can be a game finisher. Not just take out the creatures, take out my opponents as well. Experiment Cry. 2 green, 2 blue. Legendary Ooze Mutant. I love that purple. I love the way it looks in foil. Okay, anyway. So it's a 4/6 Legendary Ooze Mutant. Has all activated abilities of each of the creatures with +1/+1 counter on it, including my opponents. So if any of them have a creature with a +1/+1 counter, either I've given to them or they've managed to themselves, and has an activated ability, I can copy that activated ability with Experiment Cry. I can also tap the Experiment Cry to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Gargoyles, Vicious Watcher. 3 green for an 8/7 Vigilant Hydra. Not bad stats. These days, of course, it's not as impressive as it was just a few years ago. But still, in this deck, it's pretty clutch. So, Hydra spells cost 4 less to cast. So essentially, that's 4 free mana to make all my Hydras bigger. Whenever a creature you control becomes target of a spell, Gargoyles, Vicious Watcher, fights up to one target creature you don't control. Kind of a side effect. And I've not built this version of Animar in a while and seen it in play, and this is a new card in the stack. But I'm very curious how often that will be relevant, how often I would actually play that ability. Polychronos, World Eater. 2 green for a 5/5 Legendary Hydra. Double X, green Monstrosity X. If it's not monstrous, put X +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When it does, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. Each of those creatures deal damage equal to its power to Polychronos. So, this can be kind of a one-shot, take out a bunch of creatures and let it die, or take out a few key creatures and have it survive. It depends on the game state. Depends on if I need this in play, want this in play, or if I'm willing to let it die to its fighting. Ulashed, the Hate Seed. 2 colorless green red for another Legendary Hydra. Comes into play with a +1/+1 counter for each red creature I control, and a +1/+1 counter for each green creature I control. So obviously I don't want to play him unless I've got a lot of creatures already. So, kind of a limiting factor. I can't just buff him up when I'm casting him, as you can any other Hydra that has X in the casting cost.